Okay, good afternoon. This is Dave Manel, and I'm going to be doing the webinar today. It's on all the power tools you need for professional accounting. Basically, what I'm going to be showing is write-up using bank feeds. I'm going to show various review tools. We have something new with the general ledger review, and then I'm going to show some features with the financial statements, how to customize preferences and things of that nature. Okay, so anyway, let's get going. Okay, so Accounting Power makes write-up quick and easy. What I'm going to show first is the traditional write-up and the different features we have for it. As we know, for good traditional write-up, it has to work well with fast heads-down entry. And we have a lot of features built into the program to speed entry. And I'm going to show you a few additional things that maybe you do know or don't know about it. So first off, when you get to the write-up screen, you go to write-up entry, and you come to this screen. First thing you need to know is on the date field. If you don't like using the mouse, you can always change the date by using the up and down arrow and the left and right arrow. And on each new transaction, it will always default to the date of the previous transaction. Except when you're starting a new period, after you close a period, it'll always default to the first date of that new period. The reference number always defaults from the prior reference number. Once you select a payee, you just go ahead and start typing in the payee name. It'll find from a list of vendors. And once you select it, it'll automatically default to the proper expense account as long as it's been set up before. If you ever need to do any editing before the transactions have been posted, all the transactions that you enter will display over on the right. And from there, you just click on any one that you would want to edit, and it'll bring it up so that you can make any changes that you want to it. We have a couple of hash totals for you to use. So if you're going from a bank statement or something like that, even if you were doing it from an Excel, like an Excel sheet, although if I was using Excel, I would always just import it, but you might be using an Excel sheet and entering it. But anyway, you'll have the total number of all the entries you've made and the total dollar amount of them. So you can use those hash totals to make sure you've entered all the transactions correctly. Now, if you have a new vendor, the way the system works, as you type in the name, as soon as you hit enter to leave that line, it'll pop up add a vendor with the name of the vendor that you just typed in. So in this case, I put a new payee in, Triangle Pyramid. I'm going to be brought into the add a vendor screen. It'll bring the name automatically. If you're interested, you can enter the address and city, state, and zip and that information. Sometimes when you're doing write-up, you don't really care too much about any of that, so you may not be entering it. But you should always enter the expense account down at the bottom, and also if it's a 1099. Now you have two choices when you're doing this. One is you can save it. The other one is you can cancel it, which brings up a field that I think some people aren't sure how to use in our system. If you cancel, instead of saving it as a vendor, it's just going to put it in this second line, which is enter payee. And the reason for that is, I guess lots of times people, when they're doing write-up, if it's somebody a name that they're not expecting to see again, they don't really want it to be saved in the list of vendors. Although I think nowadays the internet's much faster, easier. There's not really a problem with having a long vendor list. I now would always enter it as a vendor, because you never know, it might come up the next month when you're doing the write-up anyway. But you can say no, and it will come here to the enter payee line. Another thing you could do when you're doing the entry, you can just skip right by clicking into the enter payee name field and just enter any of them if you don't want them to be saved as vendors. Now, what happens in the case where there's no default expense account? So once they've been entered, of course, or if you've imported the vendors and you had the expense accounts when you imported them, the system will know. But like in a case like this, I'm entering Dale Sally, and under expense account it says Suspense. So it didn't know what expense account to assign to it. So what I can do is, as long as I change it, select the account I want, and as soon as I save the transaction, that will automatically go to that vendor as the default account. So the next time you're entering that vendor, it'll be there and you don't have to worry about what to enter there. If you'd split the transaction, we'll always take the top expense account that you entered there. A couple of other features we have here. One is if you need to add a new account when you're there. All you do is you click on this link for a new account. Little window will pop up. You enter the account number, description, account type, and then the code, and simply save it, and then it's there ready for you to use. We also have a button here. This is kind of recent. Maybe it was in the last year that we added it, to clear all transactions. And what this is for is maybe you've imported information, but you imported the wrong period, you imported to the wrong client. I mean, one time I was doing write-up work and I actually wrote a whole bunch of transactions in the wrong client. So then a feature like this makes it very easy to correct those type of mistakes. This will only take care of transactions that have not been posted yet. So once you've posted them, you have to go to the edit screen and remove them. But that's the best way to use this one. You just clear all transactions. Maybe you just got confused while you were entering and you want to start fresh. So you click on that button. This one over here, where it shows a number next to each of the journals, that was more important. We used to have only post, where you would just post a particular journal you were in. Now we have the option to post all journals up on the right. So when you post all journals, they all get done. But what this number tells you is that there's 27 unposted transactions under the cash receipts journal, and there'd be a little number for each of them that had anything that was unposted. The list button, what the list button does is it takes you to a list of already posted transactions. So anything that you've done from a prior period or something, or that you've posted, if you want to go in there and edit them, one way is when you're on this screen you can click list. Another way would be to go to write up, and the second option down is edit. When you're in the list feature, you see all of the transactions from a period that you've selected. So in my case, I would look for a whole year. You click on view, and then it will show them in case you do any more filtering. And the one that I'm going to do now, I'm going to filter it by payee and just look for 3J Software. And there was only one of them. And you can click on the line where it's 3J Software and make any changes that you would want to that transaction. Another feature that we have, and it's under the write-up tab, is move transactions. And then there's a few different uses for this. Maybe some transactions were entered and the wrong account number was entered. Or like in the example I'm going to show you now, what you do if a whole mass of transactions are entered into the wrong account. Now we have a default cash account that will always default to when you're using the system. But maybe they had done something out of a different cash account, or you forgot to change the default or something. So I'm going to show an easy way if they've been entered. I know lots of times people have entered when there's a payroll account or a regular checking account. People accidentally, because I have done it too, they forget to change from one account to the other, and they keep on entering them. But there's an easy way to correct that type of error. What you do is you go to the Move Transactions. As you see, they're all selected here, so I selected the box because I know that all of them were entered in the wrong period here. You click on Move, and it gives you a few different choices. I mentioned you could also use it for account. You could use it for date. If you started with, you weren't really paying attention to the date, maybe you started it with 2015 instead of 2016 or something, you could change all the dates on them en masse. You could also, if you wanted to change from one department to another, use this. But in the case where I'm doing it, everything was entered into 1000 cash checking, but now we want to move all the transactions to the second checking account. All you do is you specify you want to do journal or change offset account, and then you enter what the new offset account is that you want. You then click OK, and then all the things would be there. Now later I'm going to be showing the bank feeds, and in this example, although here I said it would never happen, it'd be very difficult for this to happen with bank feeds, because when you have the bank feed set up, the account is already mapped to the proper account that you're importing from. So you can't really accidentally send it to the wrong account. But that's something when I show bank feeds. That'll be one of the advantages of using them. A small advantage. There's a lot of bigger advantages. Now the next thing I want to show after the move is the find. Now the find is located up here on the menu, the little spyglass. Once you click on the Find button, it takes you into an area here. You have a lot of different things that you can filter by to find transactions. You can filter by the date, by an account. You could filter by a reference number if you happen to be looking for a certain reference number of certain vendor, certain customer. In my case, I'm looking here for all things that were with the account employee benefits from the beginning of the year to today. So I entered the dates, I selected the account, I click on view, and it brings up all the different transactions that were according to that went to that expense account. Now the one difference between the find and the move is the move, of course, will actually move them for you, but move only finds period by period. So if I knew like I had 3 or 4 that had been coded incorrectly and I wanted to recode them, I would use the find transactions if they weren't all in one period to find them. So anyway, it brings up the 5 different transactions that I entered here, one for each month. And if I wanted to change them, all I would do is click on the link, and it brings up a screen where you can make any changes that you want. And just as a little note also, if you ever want to delete a write-up transaction, you just click on the X next to the entry field here. So that's the way that you would use the find transactions. There's a couple of other things you could do with the find transactions. One that I think is kind of powerful if you're doing review work and you want to be able to see all the transactions that were above a certain amount. You figure these are the ones I really want to be looking into closer. So you can come here and you can say greater than or equal to $25,000, and that would pull up all the transactions that were above that threshold. Also, if there happened to be a case where you knew there was a transaction for a certain amount, you could go equal to, and it'll find that transaction and help you straighten out whatever the issue might be on it. The next thing I want to show is the Suspense account. Now in order to get to Suspense, you have to go to Write Up, and then it's the last option right there above the one I just showed, which is Move. And what the Suspense account is for, when transactions are being entered, and maybe it's a new vendor, you don't know what they were for by your client, or maybe your staff doesn't really know how to handle a certain type of transaction. At that point, when they're being entered, you just mark them as Suspense, and then at the end of the time later, it's easy to go back and change them en masse. And all you do if you want, once you're done and you want to correct them and you have the right answers, you just go to Suspense, you click on the drop-down button, and you select the account that you want to change it to. In this case, I wanted to make them all postage and delivery, except for the Moe's Grill, which was an employee benefit. Then all you do is click on Save, and those transactions now will be in the proper account. The idea of the Suspense account is you can put something on the side, but it's easy to find it later to correct it. Now, in order to use a Suspense account, the account has to be set up. If you're using one of our default chart of accounts to start from, it'll automatically be there. But if you've imported from somewhere or you just entered a chart of accounts, it will not be there for you, so you have to set it up. And what you do in order to set it up is you go to Company Accounts, and from there you would go to Add, and you enter information about it. The account number doesn't really matter, but I always put 9999. Suspense is the description. Account type is expense. You'll only be able to do it if you have to code it as other expenses. And then on the next field, under category code, you have to put down that it's Suspense account. Those are the two important things that need to be done in order to set up to the Suspense. If you try to close a year when you have accounts that have not been assigned yet, or transactions that have not been assigned to an account yet, they'll be in that Suspense account, and you won't be able to close the year. So if you see there's a little message over here, current year has transactions in the Suspense account. If you click on that, it'll take you right to the Suspense account screen where you can then take care of the entries that needed to be coded. Okay, so that's a lot of how you can do the regular heads down write-up, and we're very good for heads down write-up. It can be done pretty quickly, but compared to using the bank feeds, it's very slow. So what are the advantages of the bank feeds? The first one is just to let you know what a bank feed is. It's importing transactions from your bank or your credit card statements. So it's not just bank. We call it bank feeds, but it's bank and credit card transactions. It can dramatically reduce data entry time. 100 or more transactions will come over in a matter of seconds. So you have to go to the screen and everything, but it takes almost no time at all to get it there. It definitely reduces errors because if you're entering 100 transactions, it can be difficult to get them all entered correctly, and when they aren't entered correctly, it's even harder to find out where one was entered wrong. It saves time and aggravation of getting data from your clients. Once your client is set up with this, you don't have to bother them in order to do the write-up work. You can always just go there and bring the transactions in automatically. Because it's so easy, now it's easy to give real-time advice to clients instead of waiting until the end of the year when you're doing a year-end write-up and also the tax return for the client. You can tell them if you see things when they happen practically. It can speed up bank reconciliations. That's not really so much for write-up work. That's where your clients are actually writing checks. It'll match up with the check. And we have a very powerful program for matching. So it'll match up the transaction and mark it as cleared. And finally, it'll reduce tax season crunch time stress because you're able to do things before the tax season comes without a lot of work. It can make it a lot less stressful. Now we have a new feature. We have the bank feeds, but now we also have a link with a company called LedgerSync. And LedgerSync is a company that'll get all of your transactions from banks together. And then from within LedgerSync, you export them. And then we have a feature to import them from LedgerSync. It takes it from their Excel file. And we're also in the process of doing it with an API, which will be much easier and much quicker. But the one thing that LedgerSync has that others don't have, like with our traditional bank feeds, is when you're in LedgerSync, you can view any checks. So when there's a check written out, now you'll be able to see who it was made out to. Whereas if you're doing a regular bank feed, it'll just say check number 101, and those you have to locate and find out what the checks were. So with LedgerSync, you can actually do that. I'm not really going into too much about LedgerSync, but it's just that we do now have this with them. And the way you would do it is when you go to upload transactions or e-bank statements, the same place you do the bank feeds, you just select LedgerSync. And we added this because we had heard from a few of our users that they had been using it and were quite happy with it. But anyway, the steps to using the bank feeds. The first step is that you have to email the link to the client so he can register with the bank. The accountant can then see on our client activity screen once the registration has been done. The accountant imports the transactions. We match with existing vendors. We add new vendors, set up aliases, and then the transactions import to accounting power and can be posted. And after this, the financials are easily prepared on a timely basis. So the first step is to email to the client. So you go to the client activity screen, and from here you select the clients who you want to register with the bank feeds. I saw that these two had not been registered yet, so I marked them. I click on email, and email will go out to them. They receive the email. Doesn't matter where they are. They can be on their phone or on their computer. They just click on the link. It'll take them to the Yodlee site. Yodlee is the person who this one is done with, or the company who this is done with. They enter the name of the bank. It'll come up with the list. They select from the list the bank, and then it'll take them to a login screen. I'm not going to show the login, but the login screen is basically looks just like the login screen from the bank when they go to log in. So they enter the login information. The important thing to remember, once they've logged in, you're now going to be able to always import the information whenever you want. But once they've logged in, that doesn't mean you have access to their bank account. You just have the ability to import the data from the account, so you have no liability about being into the client's bank account. So now, the client activity screen that I showed before in order to pick out which clients in order to send the emails to also has a lot of other information that can be helpful. First is, as I showed, it has the registered for bank feeds, so you can see exactly who's already registered. And then it also shows unmapped accounts. This is when your client has gone to Yodlee, assigned a couple of accounts, but they haven't yet been mapped to which expense account they belong to in Accounting Power. So you know that you got to go into the bank list screen and map them. It also will show you the last date that any transactions have been imported. So the bank list screen is where you would go if there were unmapped accounts, but as long as I'm here, there's two other things I just want to mention. This button that says bank feeds is if you happen to be with a client and you want to go directly to bank feeds instead of sending them email. You click on this button it'll take you to the same spot that the link in the email does. And this thing here, change merchant account, I'm not really going to go into what change merchant account actually does, but I just want to bring up, in case you didn't see the webinar last time, that we have a merchant account feature now where you and your clients also can receive payments on the invoices you sent out by setting up a merchant account. So anyway, if you didn't see it, last month's webinar is available under resources to view and to find out about it, along with some other features. So anyway, what I really came here for was to show you the list. So you click on list, it'll take you into the bank list screen. One thing is, if a bank has already been set up in Accounting Power and then the client goes to Yodlee and selects that bank, if the last 4 digits on that account are the same as the last 4 digits that are set up in Accounting Power, we'll automatically map it for you, so nobody has to do anything. Other information that you get here is you see how many transactions you imported the last time. You would also see the last sync date. And then we have these things here, which are refresh and update credentials. Now it may happen that you go to do the bank feed and it's not working. The most likely thing would be because the credentials need to be updated. So what you do is you come here and you click on update credentials, and also the refresh is if Yodlee had to do some corrections. That will then take care of refreshing and taking care of it. Any bank accounts that aren't mapped to the accounts that you have set up as in the chart of accounts will show up down here, so you know that either they need to be linked or they can be removed also. And in order to link them, all you do is would come here and click on the drop down and select the bank from the list. Okay, so now that's how you get all the background information set up and how you can keep on top of what's going on with the bank feeds. The next thing is you simply, what are you going to do when you want to import the information? Well, you go to Banking, eBanks, Upload Transactions. You select bank feeds, you enter the period. We're going to default to the date that you entered for the last one as your starting date. If you try to enter a date that's in a period that's already been uploaded, it's going to let you know to stop you from doing it. But it will not stop you because maybe you did something went wrong and you cleared all the transactions and you want to do it again. It will allow you to do it, but it will warn you that it's already been done. So once you come in here, you simply click on bank feeds, and then in a matter of seconds, transactions will have come in. And what the system does is it sees how many new transactions there were. It goes through our algorithm for matching with vendors, and it'll let you know any unidentified vendors, and they'll be showing down here. This way you can take care of them now so that the next time it'll work even better. And each time you do it, as more and more vendors get coded in, it's less and less for you to do. If there's a new vendor, all you do is you click on Add New Vendor. A little pop-up will come. You enter the new vendor. In this case, since Octopus Services hadn't been there, I entered a new one, put in the expense account, and then I would just save it and it's ready. The other thing is when the name is a little bit different on the bank statement from what you have set up as the vendor, then you set up a rule for aliases. So the next time it'll know when it sees that name, it'll automatically assign it to the right vendor. Once those things are done, you go to View, and then it takes you right into the same write-up screen that we were looking at before. And from here, they're ready to be reviewed and then to be posted. So that's pretty much it for the different write-up options. Now I'm going to go in, once that part of getting the data into the system is done, the review tools that we have in Accounting Power. The first one I want to show is going to be the trial balance review. You notice the trial balance review, you have the kind of columns that as an accountant you're used to seeing. We have transactions, adjustments, adjusted balance. You have the ability to select other columns. We have tax, other, and a few choice to make debits or credits showing and things like that. You have the ability to send this to Excel if you want to work on your trial balance in Excel. And you also have the ability to drill down. So what you can do is you can click on the transaction list. You click on that. It'll bring you to a screen that shows all of the transactions that made up that particular line. If you want to review one of them, you once again click on the reference number. It'll take you in. And from there, you're into the actual transaction. You can make either just review it to verify it or make any changes that you would need to make. And once they've been made, everything's automatically been updated. One new thing that we've added, it won't be there until the next update, but when you're on that intermediate stage where it lists all the transactions for a particular line, we've added the ability to export that to Excel also. So all you do, you click on Excel, it'll take you to the spreadsheet and take all those transactions there. When it's a system like this where it's just a few, it's not really important, but if you have maybe 100 making up a line and you really want to look into it, it can make it a little bit easier to work with. And we know that some people were asking for it, so obviously it must have some utility there. Another feature with the trial balance review is you can go in and do tick marks and notes on any account after they've been done. All you do is you click on the line. So in this case, I click on the line where purchases is. A little window will pop up. There's a bunch of choices of different things that you could choose. In my case, I chose examined, meaning that I was looking at it. And then you can put a note for somebody who's going to come later or just for yourself to remind you that something needs to be done at a later point. This is also good for if a junior person is doing it and a senior person is going to be reviewing it, you can have that they enter the information so you know what the stage is, what the process is, how far along it's been done, and things like that. The next thing I want to show is how you can do similar things from the view financials. So with the view financials, you have the exact same drill down capability. The difference is now you're actually looking at an income statement or a balance sheet. And you have a few options here that you don't have on the trial balance. The first one I want to show is that you have the date range. So maybe you want to be looking at something from the date period of right before Thanksgiving to right after Christmas. You can enter those dates. Then you get an income statement, which is the one that I put this time. You get the income statement for that period. You can actually print out an income statement or send it to Excel also if you wanted to have one. That way it'll be easy to compare it against future years during that period if you have a business that is like a Christmas-driven business or something. But you also from here have the same capabilities as far as drilling down. You also have the comparative year-to-date where you can see month by month the transactions. And from here, once again, you could drill down all the way to the transaction. Review journals. First thing, if people have been using them, they were under write-up journal review or review journals. We moved them to the trial balance screen so that you'll be able to find them there if you're looking. And because we're putting our review tools, or at least a lot of our review tools, together in one spot. The one thing that accountants like about the review journals is, like in this case, I'm going into the sales journal. You can see the whole debit and credit for any particular entry. So in this case, I'm looking at the transaction from James Garfield. I can see how much was sales tax payable, how much was the sale of the gizmos, and what the accounts receivable. You get the whole debit and credit picture when you review from here. And once again, you could also drill down if I went over to where the reference number is. Now, a new feature that we've added, which we're pretty excited about, is the General Ledger Review screen. Now, this is located under Trial Balance General Ledger. You won't see it if you go to your program. You won't see it yet. There'll be an update probably near the end of next week where it'll be there. And what you can do with this is it pulls up the entire General Ledger. You can specify what date range you want it to be. If you leave the account blank, it'll bring up a complete General Ledger for that period. If you want to just look at the General Ledger or look at the transactions for a particular account, you can select that account and it brings them up. You have the ability, just like on the other screens, to drill down to the transactions, and you'll be able to see the beginning balance. You'll be able to see all the transactions for that account and then the ending balance. So this is a pretty powerful tool, and it's a nice complement to the nice general ledger that we already have, which is just printable. So those are the different review tools I wanted to be showing right now. The next thing, I'm going to go into some different things that you can do with the financial statements. First of all, I guess, if you're used to using the program, you know that we have a complete set of financials, everything from balance sheet, cash flow, cover sheet, table of contents, accountant's report, footnotes. So that you don't have to be worried with keeping up to date on these type of things. We update our letters. When SARS-21 went into effect, all the letters were ready and updated so that you don't have to worry about what the letters should look like. As we take care of it for you. Okay, so now I'm going to show the different things you can do with comparative financials, current versus prior periods, variances, percentages, and maybe a few other things. First of all, in order to do a comparative, you just click on the box for comparative. You enter the number of years that you want to be doing the comparative statement for. And if you've been using Accounting Power, then all the information will already be in there for you. But if you're new to the system, but you want to have a comparative statement, maybe even going 4 years back, because that's what you can have, is you can have current and 4 years, 4 prior years is what you can do. But you need to get the data into the system. So the way that you would do that is you go to Trial Balance Entry, and from there you would select the period that you want to enter the transactions for. So I went in, I selected 12/31/2012. And then from here you can either enter all the information from a trial balance that you have. You could also import them. If you have it in Excel, you could just import the various trial balances from Excel. And then once that information is in there, then the comparative financials can show those older years too. We have a lot of different options. You can have up here you can do a current year one, you can do a year to date, you can do quarterly. Even if the client isn't set up as a quarterly client, it's easy to do a quarterly statement. And it's easy to do a current and year to date and also a quarter and year to date. And under the comparative statements, we have a wide variety. It's easy to change from one to the other. You just select the one you want to do. We have compared one period to a period the year before, or this quarter to a quarter from the year before, year to date to year to date. The 13 column is similar to the one that I showed in the view financials, where you see month by month the income for a client. And also up here, that I'm going to touch on this later, is you can select under custom different formats that you've set up. So you can set up formats where accounts are listed or where accounts are combined. And once they're set up, all you do is when you go to print, you just go to the drop down and change it. So it's very easy. It's pretty not hard to set them up. And once they're set up, it's very, very easy to change what you're printing. The one thing I do want to show in here is the consecutive periods. I want to show the statement of this one. So what you do is you select consecutive periods, and it will bring up the current period, which in my case was, or the one that I selected to print, which was 4/30, and then it will also show however many prior periods you've selected to show. It's just for month by month or quarter by quarter. So this is a good way to see. You don't want to have all the columns that are in that 13 column, but you want to compare a few periods. This is an excellent statement to pull up. Now I'm going to show, I guess, here how you can do variances, percentages. It's pretty straightforward. All you do is you go to Financial Preferences and you just click on the box. So in this case, if I wanted to do variance for a balance sheet, or if I wanted to do percent of sales and show variance on comparative statements, you just come in, click the box, and it's ready to go. So here's the one where, just to give you an idea of the presentation of the report, this is an income statement comparing the 2 months year to date with the prior year, shows the variance, shows you also the percentages entered in there. Other financial preferences, there's too many for me to really go into all of them here, but I'm going to just show a couple more. One is a separate column for totals. So if you like to have the multiple column income statement or balance sheet, you can do it this way. And it's very simple. You just click on that box, print it. It'll come out this way. If you decide you want it the other way, you just come back, unclick it, and it's ready. You have the ability to round amounts to whole dollars, and you select which account you want it to be the rounding account. Down below that, you have, if you want to display the DBA name instead of the client name, or you can choose to have the client name only, DBA name only, or to have both showing. Page break before expenses and before liabilities. The place where that really comes in handy is when you have a lot of accounts, in order that way to make the two parts will each fit well on their own page. I went into the title and footer to show here how you can change the headings on the income statements. So if instead of saying income statement, I want it to say statement of operations, or under balance sheet, maybe down in the footer, I want to have a second line in the description, all I do is I come in here and I enter the new information. I'm not going in to show the class descriptions, but if you want any of the classes, such as general and administrative, if you want to have a different name for it, you can just go in there and easily change the name. It's almost exactly the same as this. You'll have a list with the other class and the new class, and you change it. And you also have the abilities to go in and change fonts just by clicking on the Financial Font tab. So here, as you can see, I changed the statement of operations, so it shows statement of operations. Now, customizing groups. Customizing groups is can be very powerful. This is what I showed before, that just by once they're set up, it's just easy to change from one type thing to another. There's reports that where you want to list out all the accounts because you actually want to be able to get deeper into the detail, or your client wants to be able to get deeper into the detail. There's other cases where maybe you have a client with 10 different sales accounts, but really for financials that they're giving to to a bank or to a partnership or something, they may just want to show just the total sales. So it's pretty easy to set up and it's pretty easy to change. So anyway, what you do is initially you set up different formats. I've already done two here. One was list and one is combined, just so it's easy for me when I go to print them, I know which one to get. You can add as many as you want. There's an unlimited number that you can have. This button here, allow client access. What this does is if you've given your client the ability to print financial statements, which one thing to remember, even when you're giving them the ability to print financials, they can never print a letter or anything like that that goes with it. But if you have given them the ability to print financials, you may only want to give them the ability to certain customized accounts. This doesn't give them the right to come in here and change the customization. It just gives on the financial print screen the ability to choose different groups or not the ability to choose groups if you don't want them to. So in this case, we see I have two things that are sales, widgets and gadgets. They're in a group called sales. But this third account, miscellaneous, has not been added. So what I'm going to show is quickly how you can set up an account to a group. And when you use our defaults, we have a lot of groups and we do a lot of this grouping for you. But anyway, you click on that button. It'll bring you into a screen, and when you're in here, you select first of all which group you want that account to be. So in my case, I selected sales, and it knows based upon the type of account that it is, it limits the groups that you can select from. So since this was an income account, only the basic ones that are under the income state part of the statement would show. So I select sales, and then it's there. You also have the ability then to choose how you want it to print on the financial. You can have them to print into one line, you can combine and print a supplemental schedule, list with subtotal, list with heading, and list with subheading, with heading and subtotal. And you also have the ability to enter a print order, so you can change the order that the things would print in. But if you're using the print order, you pretty much have to assign all accounts to a group and all groups to a print order. But once it's set up, it's pretty easy to then use. But you do have to assign them. I'm kind of thinking there was something else I wanted to show on this one. No, I guess not. Anyway, once you've done it, now that group will always work together as a group. Those three sales accounts here will always work the way that you choose to have them print. So finally, the last thing I want to show, and I'm just going to show it briefly, I'm not going to really go into how you do it, is we have done a lot of work for financials for nonprofits. And what we do is when you create a company, you identify it as a nonprofit in the type of entity field. And once that is done, the system sets up funds. In our case, we automatically will set up 3 different funds, one which is unrestricted net assets, one which is temporarily, 4 different ones, one that is, no, 3, I'm sorry, temporarily restricted net assets and permanently restricted net assets. And if you want to edit those or do anything, you go to the same place in the screen under company where departments would be. And you can change the names or add additional funds there. And once these are set up, they will now print properly on the financial statements. And there's a few other things that we do. Once this entity has been identified as a nonprofit, the system will now change a lot of headings so that you don't have to worry and go in and do the work involved in the different specialized headings that are needed for some nonprofits. And also we have a nonprofit standard chart of accounts that you can choose from, which will do a lot of this work. In fact, it'll do even more for you than what's here. So in this case, when I go to do the balance sheet, it knows the name typically would be statement of financial position. It knows to say net assets, total net assets, total liabilities, and net assets. Same thing would follow through for when you're doing the equivalent of the income statement. It knows to change the name. It knows to put the funds in this type of format. That is the preferred format that's done for most nonprofits. Of course, there's a lot of different nonprofits that can be there, but finally, one final thing I want to talk about is in resources. Now, I've tried to go into different things, but there's so many things. I can't in this amount of time show all the different things or how to do them. But if you go to resources, we have guides which really go into detail how to use it. So if you go into resources, supporting documents, there'll be a financial setup guide which will go into what I did and much more. There's also a guide there for getting started with bank feeds. And I mentioned that we have these various standard chart of accounts when you're setting up a client. If you go here, you can actually view and see exactly in an Excel spreadsheet. We have a little bit over 20 of them, different industry chart of accounts. And you can see what the chart of accounts that we have set up for them, what the groups are, and everything else that we've done with them. One final thing is also under resources. If you go to webinars, you'll be able to view any prior webinars there. Okay, I think that pretty much wraps it up for today. Let me see what questions, if any, we have here. And let me just finish with also, thanks for letting me show you the program. I enjoy showing it. I want you to be able to get the best out of the program and the most out of the program. I also appreciate it if anybody gives me hints, suggestions, or anything on what they would like to see, or if they have any questions. My name is David Manell. My email is dmunnell@accountantsworld.com. And my phone number is 631-415-9252. So I'm always open to getting suggestions about future webinars or suggestions about improvements to the program. Okay, so let's see what questions we have here. There is a question, how about showing negative numbers in red in parentheses? You know, I'm not positive that they show up in parentheses, but if you go to the financial preferences, fonts, there's a place there where you can select that you want negative numbers to be in red. And I'm going to look up to see if they are also in parentheses when they're negative with red. How do you handle password changes required in the banks? That's when you would have to go to the update credentials. And really, if it's a password change, your client is the one who has to go in, unless, you know, some clients do give you their passwords, but I don't think that's a good practice. But they go into that update credentials, and then it will be updated. Will the webinar be recorded? Yes, it probably will be posted tomorrow, is my guess. will there be a decimal option instead of hitting on the dot key? You know, like if you're trying to enter $327.62, people who do the heads down write-up, they like to just write 32762 without having to put the decimal in because it's a little bit faster. And no, as of now, we don't have the plan to do that. Although it is asked every now and then, and we do look into it. But so I don't really have it on the short-term list of things that we're doing. Okay, I guess that's it. Maybe I'll wait for 1 or 2 more minutes for any future questions. And before I stop, once again, and before everybody signs off, thank you very much. Thank you for giving me your time, and I hope you got something out of this.